Hey YouTube, this is Pump. Today I wanted to cover every resource I know on improving your damage in Warcraft. I've been raiding Mythic Progression for around 2 years now, and have seen players go from gray parsing to actual 100 parsing, and I wanted to share the best resources to do just that. This guide will be split into 3 sections. Number 1 will be homework and preparation, 2 will be analyzing Warcraft logs, and 3 will be every other external website I can think of. Let's jump into homework and preparation first. This consists of everything outside of raid you can do to improve your damage. This is things like making sure you're fully enchanted, as geared as you can be from stuff like M+, and you have proper consumables going into the content you want to do. On top of this, researching raid and M+ fights beforehand can help your parsing immensely. So as for gearing up, there are 2 primary options you have for figuring out your upgrades. Number 1 is going to be raid bots, and you can do Droptimizer and you can do Simulation Craft to sim your stats and upgrades. As for me, I don't have like any upgrades left. I only have 1 upgrade with a very low drop chance, but for the majority of players, there's almost always something here to grind and try to get. Option 2 is going to be checking Warcraft logs to see the top gear you can equip and trinkets. So you would go to the fight you wanted to look at, whether it's a dungeon or a raid. And we would go to the closest fight to Patchwork, which in this case is Taros. And then we would look at the specific class that you want to be going for, which I'm just going to pick a random class. Let's say Demon Hunter. And once this loads, we get to see the top trinkets for this class. So in this case, everybody's running Incarnate Icon and Grief Torch, which both of those are raid drops, but that's not going to be the case for every class. Some classes will have dungeon trinkets as their top, and other times you get unlucky with, and both are raid drops. But you can figure out top gear this way. Like you could go to summary, and then you could just opt to copy this guy's gear. And you can also see what he has crafted, but that might change tier to tier whether or not there's crafted gear. So moving back to the main page, this is also how you figure out your best talents. You should pretty much always copy these talents. They're top players for a reason, and in very rare scenarios should you ever switch something. If you're going to switch anything, it's mostly going to be in your class talents for like defensive options. But for parsing and doing the most damage, you should probably always copy their offensive build. Really quickly, I want to go over enchants. So Wowhead articles are usually pretty accurate for enchantments specifically. You can't always trust Wowhead articles. For some classes, they are very good, but for other classes, they may not be supported that well. So I would always trust Warcraft logs before Wowhead articles, but Wowhead articles usually are good with enchants. So now that the more tedious part of gearing is done, now we get to have fun and actually perform in raid or in dungeons. You'll need 1 person to be logging in your group or dungeon, and then you just play the best you can play. Research your rotation to the best of your ability beforehand, and then you just go in and do the best you can. It's very rare for someone to parse on their first clear of a fight, and you always end up researching afterwards to figure out what you can do better. So after you have logs to analyze, your next step is going to be comparing yourself to a higher parse and seeing what they did differently. I'm going to pick a random parse here from a random log. We're just going to go all reports. Let's pick, I don't know, this alt run. So here we can see all of their logs. We're going to let's take Primal Council Mythic and see what they're doing here. So we go to damage done. And here we can see they're all playing pretty well. Let's pick the lowest guy. So he is a 406 eye level demon hunter. It's important to note eye level here. He's going to be doing a lot less damage just because he's lower eye level, but we can still compare him to someone who's killed it at the same time. So let's remember his name, Combi DH. So we're going to go to compare, and we're going to select Combi DH. And we want to compare it to everything that's close to what they have now. So we want the same raid size, same-ish kill time, and same-ish eye level. And let's see if we find any results at 406. Might not because they're killing it pretty quickly and he's a lowish eye level, but there are better parses here. So like this guy.
So let's compare him to Barry Demon Hunter. So here we can start to see what is going on differently and why he's spiking differently at certain spots. So after analyzing this and looking at it for a while, our boy Combi, he's not fell rushing enough. He's playing momentum build, and he's not upkeeping his buff of momentum. He only cast it 7 times, while the higher parse guy, Barry DH, he cast it 22 times. So he had the buff up a lot longer. On top of that, it seems like our boy Combi also missed some immolation auras. He had 7 casts, and it doesn't show the amount of casts Barry had, but he had 50 more hits of immolation aura, and obviously it's much higher on the damage. There's a couple things that attributed to this, but they're similar eye level gear, and our boy Combi actually had really good trinkets. If we go back and look, he has 421 Icon and 411 Grief Torch, and the higher parse guy actually had some mediocre trinkets in comparison to that. So definitely should be doing something a little differently, but this is where you can start to ask yourself the questions that you need to be asking to learn how to improve. Like, why is his Throglaive hitting so hard? Is there a stat weight difference? So you could check that. Um, Combi has 3,200 mastery. Look at Barry DH's mastery. He has 4,425 mastery. That's a lot more. I don't know how good. I'm pretty sure mastery is really good for Demon Hunter, but I'm not certain. But maybe he needs to fix his stat weights. That could be attributing to it. But yeah, this is overall the best way to look to how to improve your gameplay after you've started playing.
So with an actual WoW log comparison out of the way, I want to give a list of questions that you should ask yourself when you're comparing your own logs. So number one is going to be, are we similar gear and stat weights? These two can contribute a lot to a player's damage, and it can also make bad players look much better than they are. Hence, eye level parses and why those exist. Number two is going to be, are we casting spells differently than the higher parse? Figuring out what spells you're casting wrong and why the higher end player is casting what they are is a really quick way to figure out what you should be doing differently. Like for our boy Combi, he only had 7 Fell Rush casts compared to the higher end Demon Hunters casts of like he had 20 plus Fell Rush casts. It was a pretty easy thing to identify as to what went wrong. But that's not going to be the case for all of them. Sometimes you have to delve deep and figure out why you're casting X spell at what time. And then number three is going to be, did you have to deal with mechanics at X point in time that hurt your damage? Mechanics are just a part of Warcraft, and sometimes you can just get unlucky with mechanics, or your class can have procs, like Monk has Chi procs, Fire Mage has Pyroclasm procs, and procs can carry your damage and make it look a lot better than it is. So moving on to the 3 external websites that I use the most. Number one is going to be Sub Creation. This gives tier lists of kind of what's meta in Mythic Plus right now, but more importantly, it shows you builds for M Plus that you can copy and see what people are running. So let's just keep our theme of Havoc Demon Hunter. So you can copy their talent tree, and then you can view their embellishments, all of their enchants, everything important. Like you can see everything that they're running, and also the gear they're running in every slot. It's really really good website to check for Mythic Plus specifically. Moving on to Murloc.io. This is mostly a PvP website, but it does have some good stuff for PvE. So let's just continue with Demon Hunter. We go to Havoc, and there's a section for M Plus here, and we can see the top Havoc Demon Hunters and what they're running exactly. So let's just pick the literal top Demon Hunter at 3,300 IO, and we can see his stat weights. He's pretty low mastery. He got a lot of crit, and you can see kind of what they're running and what talents they run, and what kind of enchants and all their equipment and all that sort of stuff. Really good website, but this is primarily a PvP website that I use. The last one I could think of was Wipe. What you're going to do with this one is you're going to copy your log report, and then you're going to paste it here, and you're going to hit search. So I just took the alt run that I analyzed earlier. This is their Primal Council, and you can see it plugs out a bunch of mechanic stuff. Now, I know what you're saying. You're going to say mechanics aren't damage, but sometimes they can tell a story of like why something went poorly. Like here, they only had 1 death to Conductive Mark. but sometimes that might be a lot higher. And they didn't Hellstorm health pot a single time, which is pretty funny. But then you can go to specific players. Oh, never mind. Not enough yet, but you can still see an overall mechanics outline of what happened and where. So apparently they stood in scorched ground too much, and that's bad. But yeah, good little site to check on mechanics. So with that all out of the way, let's summarize everything that I said from this video. So number one, we want to gear and enchant ourselves to the max. Gear is really important for damage in Warcraft, and if you aren't geared, you're probably never going to be near the top for parse. Number two is going to be practicing your rotation and then doing the best you can in Raid and M+. The best players usually always practice at training dummies. It's really underrated to just practice your rotation before you go and do any content in the game. And then finally, we need to analyze logs and nerd out and figure out what we should be doing differently. That'll do it for this video. If you guys learned anything, feel free to subscribe. And if you have any other external websites or suggestions on how to improve, please leave a comment down below and I will pin a comment on all of your guys' comments. Thanks a bunch, and I'll catch you in the next video.